In a game defined by inches, some players built monuments, not with one great season, but with numbers so massive, so untouched, they might as well have been carved into stone. This isn't just a story about baseball. It's about the records that time forgot to break, from iron men who never sat down to ghosts on the base paths, to a two-way phantom rewriting physics in real time. These are the numbers no one dares chase, because chasing them means chasing the impossible. Every generation believes it's seen the best the game can offer, the fastest pitches, the longest home runs, the most dominant performances. But what if I told you that some of the most incredible feats in baseball history already happened decades ago, and that no amount of training, talent, or technology will ever touch them again? This isn't just about nostalgia. It's about limits, the limits of the human body, the structure of the modern game, and the ways in which baseball, for all its evolution, has closed the door on certain legends ever being dethroned. You see, records aren't just numbers. They're time capsules. They carry the weight of eras, of rule books now rewritten, of stadiums long demolished, and some were made in conditions so unique, so specific to their time, that even trying to repeat them feels like chasing. Shadows. Take Cal Ripken Jr., for example. He didn't just play the game. He showed up every day for over 16 years straight, 2,630 consecutive games, no days off, not for injury, not for rest, not even for personal tragedy. In a modern era obsessed with load management and off days, his record doesn't just seem unlikely. It seems impossible. The closest active player is more than 2,000 games behind. You could play every game for the next decade and still not touch Cal's iron streak. It's not just durability. It's a mindset we don't build athletes for anymore. And then there's Cy Young, a name so legendary. MLB named an award after him, but few remember the raw numbers behind the myth. 511 career wins. That's not a typo. In an age where even a 200-win career is Hall of Fame worthy, Cy Young's total looks like a fantasy stat line, but it made sense for his time. Pitchers then didn't have pitch counts or five-man rotations. They didn't throw 98 with sliders that wreck your elbow. They were workhorses, often finishing what they started. Cy Young completed 749 games. That's more than most modern pitchers start. The active leader in complete games today, Justin Verlander, with 26. Let that sink in. But the point here isn't to say they don't make him like they used to. It's that they literally can't. The rules, the schedules, the medical staff, the entire game is engineered to protect arms now, to stretch careers through careful usage. Records like Cy Young's aren't in danger. They've been locked away by the very evolution of the sport. And then there's a man who didn't just hit. He collected hits like a machine, Pete Rose, with 256 career hits, 24 years, 10 seasons with over 200 hits. He averaged 177 hits per season, which doesn't sound insane until you realize how many years he did it for, and how rare it is today for players to even reach that total once. Current greats like Freddie Freeman and Jose Altuve, still nearly 2,000 hits away, and they're already in their mid-30s. Even if they played until 45, they need to hit at a pace unseen in modern baseball. Why? Because players today are asked to do more than just get on base. They're asked to slug, walk, hit for power. Pete Rose's game was about volume, consistency. It's not a priority anymore, and that's why his record is frozen in time. These aren't just quirky stats. They're reflections of baseball's shifting soul, of how what we once praised, grit, volume, longevity, has been replaced by efficiency, bursts of excellence, and load balancing. It's not worse, it's just different, but it means certain. Records will forever remain ghosts in the hallways of Cooperstown, and we've only just begun. There are more, many more, each one stranger, more brilliant, or more unlikely than the last. Some were built on luck, others on obsession, but all of them, every single one, now stand untouched and likely untouchable. Some records were set because someone was just better, faster, stronger. But others are unbreakable because they dance in the margins between skill and myth, between order and chaos. They're the ones that feel like miracles, and yet they happened. We remember them not because they seem achievable, but because they seem unreal. And at the top of that list is a number that feels like it belongs in folklore, not in a box score. 56. That's how many consecutive games Joe DiMaggio got a hit in. 56 straight, over 2 months in 1941. He defied math, fatigue, and pressure. During the streak, he hit point for .08, knocked in 55 RBIs, and struck out only 5 times. And this wasn't luck. This was control, pure, surgical mastery of the bat. Modern hitters, no matter how good, don't string together hits like that anymore. Today, the game is built to prevent it. Pitching matchups change mid-inning. Scouting reports are endless. Shifts, sliders, analytics, everything stands in the way of a hot streak living that long. The longest active hitting streak right now barely cracks 20. Most fans can't even name the current leader because it's not a story anymore. DiMaggio's record isn't just unlikely, it's structurally impossible now. The game chokes it out before it can breathe. Then there's Ichiro Suzuki, a man who came into the league late and still rewrote the rules of what a hitter could be. In 2004, Ichiro set the single-season record for hits with 262. That's not just leading the league. That's obliterating it. To break it, a modern player would need nearly 700 plate appearances and bat .390 for an entire season. That hasn't happened in over 30 years. But Ichiro didn't rely on power. He was an artist, spraying hits to every corner of the field, beating out infield singles, slicing line drives overdrawn in infields. He had timing that bordered on supernatural, and he was disciplined, meticulous, almost monk-like in his approach. His record came not from brute force, but from near-perfect technique and an unwavering identity. It's no coincidence that in today's MLB dominated by exit velocity and launch angle, there is simply no one like Ichiro. These records exist in a fragile window. DiMaggio thrived in an age before advanced relievers and pitch-by-pitch breakdowns. Ichiro's approach flourished just before analytics erased the value of contact hitters. The sport evolved, and these feats slipped into legend, unable to be replicated in the lab-like precision of modern baseball. And here's the thing, we don't want them to be broken. Deep down, we want those numbers to remain out of reach, because they remind us that there was a time when players didn't just play the game, they bent it. When skill and rhythm, day after day, could turn into something close to perfection. In baseball, power is seductive. It draws the eyes, fills the stands, and builds legends. But even power, for all its might, has its ceiling. And some players didn't just brush against that ceiling. They shattered it, climbed above it, and then pulled the ladder up behind them. Their records still stand today, not because no one tries to break them, but because they expose just how far the human body and the game can be pushed. Let's start with a number that still echoes through ballparks, 73. That's how many home runs Barry Bonds launched in 2001. It wasn't just a record, it was a rupture. He broke the previous high of 70, set by Mark McGwire during the steroid-fueled race of 1998. He did it in fewer at-bats, fewer swings, more walks, more fear. Pitchers stopped throwing to him. He was walked intentionally over 100 times that year. And yet, when he did swing, it was violence mixed with calculation. People can debate the chemistry, the ethics, but the numbers don't flinch. Without Pez, it's unlikely anyone will come close. Aaron Judge managed 60 homers in 2022, the cleanest shot at the record yet, and still 11 short. Bonds' season is sealed not just by scandal, but by the sheer efficiency of destruction. He made greatness look easy, and that's precisely why no one can follow. But power isn't always about the long ball. Sometimes it's about opportunity. Take Hack Wilson, a name fading in the public's memory, but whose 1930 season stands like a monument in the fog. He drove in 191 RB is a number so high it sounds made up. That's not just power. That's clutch. That's teammates getting on base at the perfect moments. That's timing, batting order, and execution aligning for a single season of near impossible production. In today's game, where OBP is lower, lineup protection is thinner, and pitching is more specialized, a player would need a miracle of consistency to even sniff 160. The modern high-water mark, Manny Ramirez with 165 RB is in 1999, still 26 short. And if that wasn't enough, let's take a turn down the forgotten corner of the field, triples, the most thrilling, awkward, exhilarating play in baseball. In 1912, Chief Wilson hit 36 triples in a single season. Modern players barely reach 15. Why? Because today's fields are symmetrical and smaller. Outfielders are faster. The ball travels further and either leaves the park or dies in a glove. Triples have become unicorns. Wilson's record wasn't just about speed. It was about chaos. About outfields the size of pastures and balls bouncing like pinballs off concrete walls. To match him, a player today would need to be about the fastest runner and the luckiest hitter in the league every game. These power records, homers, RBs, triples, all tell the same story. The game has changed, not just in how it's played, but in where it's played and how it's built. Fields are optimized. Swings are dissected. Pitchers are data-driven monsters. The odds that any single player can rise above all of it, year after year, have shrunk to almost nothing. And yet, those numbers still stare at us from the record books, not to taunt, but to remind that once someone did what no one else has, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Power at the plate may earn headlines, but power from the mound, true, overwhelming power rewrites the game in real time. It silences crowds. It bends strategy. It makes even the best hitters look foolish, and in baseball history, a handful of pitchers have elevated dominance into something mythic. Their records don't just survive the passage of time. They stand in defiance of everything modern baseball has become. Take Nolan Ryan, the man they called the Ryan Express, over 27 seasons. He didn't just pitch. He detonated. His fastball was a blur. His presence on the mound, intimidation incarnate. He holds not one, but two of baseball's most unreachable pitching records. First, the staggering 5,714 career strikeouts, averaging nearly 9.5 per 9 innings over nearly 3 decades. That's not longevity. That's controlled destruction. For context, the current active leader, Justin Verlander, has around 3,000 strikeouts after 20 seasons. To catch Ryan, he'd need to pitch 10 more years at an elite level, something nearly unthinkable. Even younger flamethrowers like Jared Cole are still over 3,500 strikeouts away. They're climbing a mountain that keeps growing with every game Ryan pitched. But the number that truly feels like fiction? 7 career no-hitters. That's nearly double the total of the next closest pitcher. It wasn't just power. It was endurance, timing, and the ability to be perfect. Not once, but over and over. His final no-hitter, thrown at age 44. He wasn't defying the odds. He was rewriting them. And then there's a record that feels almost cartoonish now. 749 complete games. That's how often Cy Young went the distance. He didn't pitch to win. He pitched to end the game. Compare that to today's leaders, where even the most seasoned arms barely crack 30 complete games over an entire career. Pitch counts, bullpen matchups, and injury prevention have turned the complete game into a relic. Most managers would be fired for letting a pitcher go past 130 pitches in July, but Cy, he expected to do it weekly. That we turn to a record so rare, it's never been repeated, even once. In June of 1938, Johnny Vandermeer threw back-to-back no-hitters, consecutive starts. One against the Boston Bees, the next against the Brooklyn Dodgers. It's hard enough to throw one no-hitter. To do it again, with the media watching, the pressure mounting, and fatigue setting in, it's almost unthinkable. No one has come close since. The randomness, the precision, the focus, it all lined up perfectly once. Modern baseball doesn't allow for this kind of dominance anymore. Pitchers don't face lineups 3 or 4 times. Relievers are custom fit for lefty, righty matchups. Data dictates when a pitcher's done, even if he feels fine. And the hitters? They're stronger, savvier, and more prepared than ever. That's the paradox. Today's pitchers throw harder, train smarter, and recover better, but they'll never touch the completeness, the chaos, or the control of the legends who came before, not because they aren't great, but because the game itself won't let them. Before StatCast, before the launch angle revolution, before power swallowed up every aspect of the game, there was another kind of spectacle, one that didn't require fences or muscle. It began with a twitch of the lead foot, a narrowing of the eyes, and a heartbeat since the rhythm of a pitcher's windup. It was the stolen base, a daring ballet between predator and prey. And once upon a time, it ruled the diamond dot. No one understood this better than Rickey Henderson. Not just a speedster, not just a base runner. Rickey was a disruptor, a man who could change the entire complexion of a game with his legs. Alone, over 25 seasons, he stole 1,406 bases, a number so absurd it defies logic. That's more than double what most Hall of Famers manage in a career. And he did it against the best arms of his time, with pitchers who knew exactly what he was going to do and still couldn't stop him. To break his record, a modern player would need to average 70 for stolen bases a year for 2 decades. Think about that. Most teams today don't even attempt 70 for stolen bases in a season. The league's leader in 2023, Ronald Acuna Jr., with 73, and that was seen as explosive. Rickey did that in average years. In 1982, he swiped 130 bases, and he did it in just 149 games. Speed used to be strategy, a threat, a weapon, but analytics changed everything. Data showed that getting caught stealing was too costly, so front offices pulled back. Power became king, walks became sacred, and with it, the art of base running, the aggressive, high-wire act that once lit up every close game, faded into nostalgia dot, and yet the ghosts remain. Ty Cobb, the wild-eyed engine of early baseball, stole 897 bases in his career. In an era when gloves were optional and spikes were weapons, Cobb ran with rage. His aggression redefined base running, and while his stolen base total eventually fell to Henderson, his spirit, that raw edge of chaos, still echoes in every daring. Lead off first dot, then there's the concept of perfection in motion. In 2024, Shohei Ohtani joined the 40-40 club in just 126 games, the fastest anyone has ever done it. That means 40 home runs and 40 stolen bases. A mix of power and speed that would have seemed genetically impossible just a decade ago. His 40th homer, a walk-off grand slam. If Henderson ran to break you, Ohtani runs to be the future. But even with Ohtani's brilliance, records like Rickey's and Cobb's feel sealed away, not because no one has the legs, but because the game doesn't ask for it anymore. The steal has become a calculated risk, and calculation is the enemy of instinct. That's the tragedy. The stolen base was never just a stat. It was an event, a challenge to the pitcher, a gasp from the crowd, a shifting of momentum in real time. Today, we cheer towering home runs, but we've forgotten the drama of a foot race to second, of a catcher's arm uncorked in panic, of a manager's fist pumping as dust clouds rise. The fastest records ever set weren't just about time. They were about daring, about pressure, about what happens when the whole stadium knows what's coming and still can't stop it. Power might fill highlight reels and speed might ignite a rally, but there's a quiet elegance to pure contact, the ability to read a pitch, adjust mid-swing, and place a ball exactly where gloves aren't. In baseball's early chapters, this wasn't just a skill, it was the pinnacle, the art of hitting for average, of living above the point for a O line, once defined greatness, but now it feels like a fossil. Let's begin with the man who turned hitting into science, Ty Cobb. With a career batting average of .366, Cobb didn't just hit, he devoured pitchers. He won 12 batting titles, hit over point for .003 separate times, and played with a ferocity that made every plate appearance a psychological war. His bat control was mythic. He once claimed he could place a ball within inches of where he wanted it, and for a man who hit .366 over 20 for seasons, who's arguing? Then there's Josh Gibson, the Negro League's answer to Cobb, and some say even better. Gibson's estimated career average, .371. He combined power with surgical precision, and though incomplete records make it hard to crown him definitively, to ignore him would be a mistake. Gibson didn't just hit, he elevated hitting into performance art. Every swing a statement against exclusion, against doubt. And then there's Rogers Hornsby, who in 1924 posted a .42 for batting average, the highest of the modern era. From 1921 to 1925, he averaged over .400. Let that sink in. Average .40 over 5 seasons. It wasn't a fluke. It was a rain. Hornsby didn't have today's batting gloves, video analysis, or computerized heat maps. He had vision, timing, and relentless consistency. But here's the truth. No one has hit .40 in over 80 years. Not Tony Gwynn, not Ted Williams since 1941. And with modern pitching velocity, defensive positioning, and bullpen specialization, it's unlikely anyone ever will again. Why? Because the game has fundamentally changed. Today's pitchers don't give hitters 5 at-bats per game. They hand them 1, maybe 2. Before a specialist comes in with a completely different arm angle, a completely different plan, defenses shift with algorithmic precision, closing holes that used to be automatic singles. And hitters, they're taught to launch, to walk, to swing big, even if it means missing more. Batting average has quietly slipped into irrelevance. A player hitting .270 with 35 home runs is now more valued than one hitting .325 with 12. Front offices prioritize OPS, WAR, and slugging percentage. They don't chase .400. They don't even mention it. And that's what makes the accomplishments of Cobb, Gibson, and Hornsby feel so distant. They lived in a world where every at-bat was a puzzle, where the goal wasn't just to swing hard, it was to survive, to adapt, to win the smallest battles over 160 games, over decades. Their records endure not because they can't be reached, but because no one plays the game that way anymore. Some records were made in bursts, a hot streak, a dominant season, a flash of brilliance. But others were forged in the long haul, carved one day at a time like notches on a prison wall. They're not the flashiest, but they're the most awe-inspiring, because they weren't built on speed or strength. They were built on refusal to stop, refusal to rest, refusal to break, and no one embodied that refusal more Cal Ripken Jr. He didn't miss a game for 2,630 straight, not one. That's more than 16 years of showing up through bruises, through slumps, through tragedies and triumphs. Always there, always in the lineup, in an age where players are given scheduled rest days. When even minor strains can sideline a star for weeks, Ripken's record doesn't just stand. It stares back at the modern game with quiet defiance, and he didn't coast through it either. He was an all-star, a 2-time MVP, a defensive anchor, all while redefining the shortstop position. His streak wasn't just endurance, it was greatness on a loop. The closest active player, still nearly 1,000 games away, and he's already years into his career. This isn't just unlikely, it's over. The game isn't designed for it anymore. Teams manage workloads, sports science intervenes, and players, rightly, prioritize longevity and recovery. Ripken's record was built in a window of culture and toughness. That doesn't exist anymore, and frankly, that's okay. But what he did should be remembered for what it was, an iron act of love for the game. And then there's Pete Rose, baseball's relentless machine, 4,156 hits. That number doesn't even feel real. It's not just a career, It's a lifetime. Rose played for 24 years, recorded 10 seasons with 200 or more hits, and averaged 177 hits per season. He didn't rely on home runs or walks. He hunted contact every day, every at-bat. He was brash, aggressive, and controversial, but when he stepped to the plate, he delivered. No one since has even come close. Freddie Freeman and Jose Altuve are still nearly 1,000 hits away, and they're both over 30. Even if they defied aging, they need to maintain elite levels of production into their 40s, something Rose did because he was obsessed with baseball, with hustle, with proving people wrong, and that's what these records represent. They're not just numbers, they're philosophies. Ripken said, "I'm here, every day, no matter what." Rose said, "Try and stop me." And they both said it not in one season or three, but over decades. In a world that praises short bursts of greatness, these were long, slow burns. And that's what makes them so untouchable. The game has changed. Workload is data-driven. Medical staff monitor every tweak. Players are taught to be efficient, not eternal. So maybe no one will ever break 1,632 or reach for 1,156. Maybe no one should. But that doesn't mean we forget, because those numbers, they're not just milestones. They're monuments. Most baseball records are the product of consistency, repetition, and time. But every so often, the game delivers something that defies all logic, a perfect storm of talent, timing, and sheer improbability. These aren't streaks. They're EXPLOSIONS surreal, once-in-a-lifetime performances that feel more like folklore than box scores. They don't just feel unbreakable. They feel like they were never supposed to happen in the first place. Let's talk about Fernando Tatis Sr. and what he did on April 23, 1999. In one inning, yes, one inning, he hit the grand slams off the same pitcher against the Dodgers. It started with the bases loaded in a 2-0 deficit. One swing, boom, a grand slam. Then, after walks, hits, chaos, and no pitching change, he came up again with the bases loaded and did it again. Second grand slam, same inning, same man on the mound, same universe. Somehow, the odds of this happening again, 12 million to 1. Not only do you need a player to hit a grand slam, a rare feat in itself, but you also need him to bat again in the same inning, with the bases loaded, against a manager stubborn enough to leave the pitcher in. Then he has to do it again. It's not just unlikely, it's a cosmic accident. A beautiful, absurd slice of baseball madness that still hasn't been touched. Now step back in time to June 1938, when Johnny Vandermeer did the impossible. Twice, he threw back-to-back no-hitters in consecutive starts. His first, against the Boston Bees, his second, just for days later, against the Brooklyn Dodgers. Think about what that means. One no-hitter is a lifetime achievement. Two in a season is career-defining. Two in a row, that's a glitch in the matrix. Plenty of great pitchers have thrown multiple no-hitters. Nolan Ryan, Sandy Koufax, Justin Verlander, but never consecutively, because to pull it off, you need brilliance and luck and perfect defense and no margin for error. And then you need to do it again under the spotlight, with everyone watching, no pressure dot, and these aren't the only surreal records. There's Chief Wilson's 36 triples in 1912. In a modern game where most players top out at 10 to 15. There's Hack Wilson's 191 RB is in 1930, when the stars aligned and every swing found ducks on the pond. These are records born from chaos, not trends, and chaos doesn't schedule itself. They remind us that baseball, for all its numbers and nuance, is still capable of magic, that sometimes the stars align, and someone does something so ridiculous it feels like the game itself is laughing. That's what Tatis did, what Vandermeer did, what these rare, spontaneous moments of madness continue to whisper. You never know what you're about to see. But will we ever see them again? Probably not. Not with the precision of pitching changes, the caution of managers, the spreadsheet era, efficiency that squeezes randomness out of every at-bat. Baseball today is more controlled than ever, which is why we cling to these moments. They broke the rules, not of the game, but of probability, and they made us believe, even if only for a minute, that anything was possible. Some records are visible. You can see them every swing, every game, home runs, strikeouts, highlight reels. But then there are others, quiet, cumulative, monstrous in scale, that sit like mountains in the background. You don't notice them until you try to climb, and by then, it's too late. These are the records not of a moment, but of volume, of impact, game after game, season after season, year after year. And at the top of this kingdom stands a name that commands reverence. Hank Aaron, 6,856 career total bases. That number doesn't get talked about enough. It's not flashy, it doesn't fit on a banner, but it's the ultimate measure of a hitter's impact. Singles, doubles, triples, home runs, it counts them all. Every advance, every plate appearance that moved the needle. And nobody moved it more than Hank Aaron to break it down. He played 23 seasons, averaged nearly 300 total bases per year, and did it with quiet, sustained greatness. No PEDs, no scandal, just relentless production. His swing was compact, his demeanor calm, but his results devastating. Let's compare. Freddie Freeman, one of the most consistent hitters of the modern era, is 16 seasons into his career and sits just over 3,900 total bases, barely more than halfway to Aaron. He'd need to average over 420 total bases per year for the next 7 years, into his late 30s, just to match it. That's superhero territory. Aaron didn't just compile numbers. He carved them. Consistency was his superpower in an era that celebrated flashy sluggers. He was a metronome of damage, always present, always producing, and what's even wilder, he broke Babe Ruth's home run record without being just a home run hitter. He hit for average, for doubles, for triples. His total base record reflects not just power, but completeness. And then there's Barry Bonds, whose very name sends shockwaves through baseball history. He may not hold the total bases record, but his 73 home run season in 2001 and career ops numbers were so off the charts that pitchers refused to throw to him. At his peak, he was unhittable not because of his swing, but because he never swung, unless he absolutely had to, and when he did, the ball didn't just leave the yard, it disappeared. These two players, Aaron and Bonds, represent the ends of the spectrum. Aaron, the relentless force. Bonds, the singular phenomenon, but both exist in a realm of performance that feels extraterrestrial today, because modern baseball, for all its metrics and muscle, just doesn't allow for that kind of accumulation. Players get hurt, they get rested, they get platooned. Seasons are shorter for stars and longer for specialists. The league is faster, the game more fragmented. You can dominate for 5 years, even 10, but 20, with that level of production, with that kind of durability, no chance. That's why Aaron's 6,856 total bases are so revered. Because it's not just a record. It's a monument to everything that baseball once valued: endurance, versatility, and presence. Every night, every game, every pitch, no fanfare, no shortcuts, just the long, steady march of greatness. Every era of baseball has had its myth-makers: Ruth, DiMaggio, Aaron, Bonds, each pushing the boundaries of what a single player could do. But even among giants, there occasionally comes a moment so surreal, so statistically outrageous, that it seems designed not by evolution, but by imagination. Welcome to the age of Shohei Ohtani, the man who didn't just break a record. He broke the concept of what a baseball player could be. In 2024, Ohtani joined the 40-40 club, 40 home runs and 40 stolen bases in just 126 games, the fastest anyone has ever done it. He didn't limp across that finish line either. His 40th homer, a walk-off grand slam. It wasn't just a stat, it was a statement that he wasn't just elite, he was redefining elite. And he wasn't done, because while we marvel at the 4040, club, Shohei's eyes were already on something far more ridiculous. The 50-50 club. No one had ever done it. Not Barry Bonds. Not a Rod. Not anyone. Because it requires a perfect storm of speed, strength, health, and timing. And he was checking every box. And oh, did I mention he's a pitcher, too? That's where the comparison game ends. Because no one, not in the 150-year history of Major League Baseball, has ever come close to what Ohtani is doing. He's not just a two-way player. He's a lead on both sides of the ball. All-star caliber as a hitter. All-star caliber as a starting pitcher. He's Babe Ruth if Babe Ruth had faced 100 miles per hour sliders and wiped out analytics era lineups. But Ohtani's greatness isn't just about the duality. It's about what it says to the sport. The limits are not final. That even in an era where specialization is religion, where rest days are mandatory and roles are rigid, someone can come along and shatter the framework. It also forces a new question. What if the next generation doesn't specialize? What if the next Ohtani is already a teenager, watching him on TikTok, practicing both mound mechanics and launch angle swings? What if this isn't an anomaly, but a blueprint? Because here's the thing, Ohtani's not just setting records. He's inspiring futures. Baseball, for all his analytics and algorithms, still lives on imagination. And nothing sparks that imagination like seeing one person do the job of two, and do it better than almost anyone alive. Still, let's be honest, the records Ohtani is chasing may stand for decades, not because they're impossible, but because he is. The durability, the discipline, the sheer effort it takes to master the crafts in a league this competitive. It's staggering. And whether he hits 50-50 or not, his presence in the game has already changed the calculus of what's possible. He's not just a player. He's a paradigm shift. And that's where we end our journey. From Ironman and strikeout kings to base stealers and bat wizards. From impossible streaks to once-in-a-lifetime moments. The history of baseball isn't just told in innings and outs. It's told in records, not as trophies, but as legacies, as reminders of how far one person, in the right moment, can stretch the limits of belief. And in Shohei Ohtani, we're not just watching history, we're watching someone write it in real time.